I wanted to get your take on this because I'm still learning, and I wanted to watch a bit more of Khabib. And for the uninitiated, Khabib is an interesting character and a boring fighter to watch. In my initial impression, a boring,
Okay.
no, not boring, but I found myself when I watched all three boxers fighters between Poirier, Gaethje, and Conor taking on Khabib. So the last three fights that he took on. And I watched those because the conversation is about, Dana White referring to who would be the next fighter. And this was the second article leading on from that. But before I go into this article, watching Khabib, who's an incredible grappler, and his strength is getting someone on the ground and getting them to submit. That's my understanding from watching his last three fights. That's where he is strong. And the only place he was at all somewhat vulnerable in all three fights was when he was standing up, when he had some distance between himself and the other fighter. You may tell me I'm stupid and full of shit and I don't know what I'm talking about, but that was my impression. So I'm just sharing for anybody who's still learning. I'm new to this whole fight scene. But Khabib it's not boring to watch. It was more exciting when you see them standing up and changing blows. And as soon as they're on the ground, it is interesting to watch how these fighters get on their feet, get out of these holds from Khabib. But the conversation, I was intrigued by this because you were talking about how Khabib may not take on another fighter. He's waiting for the right fighter, or he's saying there's nobody out here that even offers me a challenge and I want to take on a challenge. Now, at the beginning of the week, Dana White was saying, look, we're going to actually go back to 1-7. We're going to have him fight it out. And the best one, we'll see if Khabib wants to fight. And then just a few days later, this was, I think, 2 days ago, Dana White is predicting that Khabib will agree to fight Conor, specifically because he hates Conor. He just dislikes Conor. I watched the end of the Poirier fight, and there was a lot of respect between the two fighters after the Conor victory. And for those of you that have seen this, I'm sorry I'm rehashing it, but it's new to me. He was taunting Conor as he was on the ground. Clearly there is bad blood there, and that didn't go away at the end of that fight. And I'm reading between the lines because when I watched those three fights, I thought Conor was the one who gave Khabib the most trouble in those three fights. Would I be accurate in saying that?
I would agree with you. We're saying trouble. He won I believe he won a round.
He won the third round in my view. I think Conor comfortably won the third round.
I think that's common consensus as well. And actually did a very good job with takedown defense as well. Like Khabib he's going to get you down, especially if he pushes you against the cage. He's going to drag you down. But Conor did really well to start with. I think it's underrated at how well he did initially. And remember, he did have a bit of time out of the ring as well, and his training was focused on just that rather than going for the kickboxing. But yeah, I think your assessment of him doing better than the other two, I think is very fair. He lasted longer.
Yeah. Well, even when he was, I think there was second round. I think definitely first round, Khabib got him down, but I felt like Conor wasn't out of control, or he seemed to he was conserving energy. Second round, Khabib got him down again, but was smashing his face in, pounding ground.
It started.
And Conor did a fucking good job of getting through that second round and on his back, avoiding some of the worst shots. He would have landed some big shots in that exchange, but he came out not too dazed, and he still had movement, because in the third round, he was landing some serious shots, and he was doing a hell of a job of keeping Khabib at distance. Then the fourth round, I think he was probably a little bit gassed from those exchanges in the third round. He spent 2 rounds on his back, a third round trying to be the aggressor. Fourth round, he's down on his back in submission. In comparison to Poirier, who he was gassed from the first attempted grapple, from what I saw. And he did land a few shots, but they were kind of flaily, and you could see him huffing. And I felt like Khabib comfortably won that. And then the Gaethje fight, that didn't even look like it was even that close. I thought Poirier, if anything, landed more serious blows than Gaethje. So I'm wondering if, just to sort of summarize, I'm sort of going on here. But I'm wondering if Dana does see Conor McGregor as the best, most viable option if he can get his shit together. And that's kind of what I'm reading between the lines on. Trying to motivate Conor to train and show up to the ring prepared for Khabib, and give Khabib that one last match, because there's bad blood there.
I don't think it's a case of Conor getting his shit together to fight. Conor would love that rematch to try and get redemption. He would do anything to get that match. It's Khabib that doesn't want to sign the dotted line, and I don't see it happening because Khabib has too much to lose and not enough to gain. I'm a fan of both of them. I love Conor for what he does as a fighter. I respect him, and I think he's a lot of fun. He's hugely entertaining. Khabib, I just love for his non-emotionalness, his dedication, and I absolutely love watching him dominate people on the ground. I find it fascinating. But I know that for the less serious fan, they might find that more boring. People tend to prefer stand-up fighters as they do to grapplers because it's just people don't quite understand what they're looking at. But once you've even got a very basic understanding, which I do, of grappling, you can't help but appreciate how good Khabib is at that. Like, yeah, maybe the best ever in the UFC that we've seen. So, okay, the fight itself, his coach, Javier Mendez, this is Khabib's coach, he said, I think it was maybe prior to McGregor, Khabib's most scariest opponent is Conor McGregor. The person that could defeat him is Conor McGregor standing up, and he could get knocked out by him. So that was coming from his coach, and I think that they know and respect his stand-up game. So why would Khabib, having beat him, he beat him, I think, 3 rounds to 1, in my opinion. He dominated that fight largely, apart from a round. Why would he risk everything? The hate, the build-up in that fight was very stressful for both fighters. Why would you give this guy who you dislike and disrespect any chance of coming back when you've already beaten him? But what would you gain from doing it if you just mauled him again for 3 rounds? There's nothing extra for that. So I just don't see Khabib doing it. I think Conor would do it for free. He would jump at it, and I don't think he'd need the motivation for it. I just don't see why Khabib would do it.
Dana White disagrees with you on this one. Dana White thinks it's possible. I don't have enough information to really have a solid opinion on that. I think I was reading between the lines of what Dana White was saying here, which is before this, he was saying he hasn't said he's not going to meet, and he doesn't want to tie up the division. That's Khabib's stance. And when he referenced Conor, he said, I also believe he hates Conor so bad. The hate that these two have is real as anything you've ever seen. And I believe that if Conor came out, if Conor came out of this thing and Conor was going to be the guy to win the title, now I truly believe that he would fight Conor. I believe that. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see how it plays out. And what I'm reading into here is, and just from having watched those fights, I think Dana White would like to see that rematch. And I think that's what he's trying to promote. And I think he'd like to see that because Conor, like you said, troubled Khabib the most. Khabib doesn't have somebody that right now that is compelling for him to take on. And I think Dana White wants to see Conor McGregor, given his recent comments on Conor McGregor following the Poirier fight. The uninitiated, I thought Conor represented himself all right after being off. Dana White felt like the way he was moving, the way he was not defending those leg kicks, he did not come in. He came rocking up into Abu Dhabi, Yas Island on his yacht, and was not really prepared. Didn't look like somebody who had taken the fight seriously. And I think he wants to see, reading between the lines, a dedicated Conor McGregor going through these fighters again post Poirier and coming out on top, so he can try to negotiate that Khabib Conor rematch.
Yeah, so Dana White, I have a mixed opinion of him. Overall, I really like what he does, but he's a promoter, so he is constantly trying. But he has a big sway in what fights happen as well. I do believe he's not the. There is a team of people that actually match up the fights, but he's part of that process for sure. So yeah, of course he would love those two because they're the two biggest stars in the UFC. He would love them to fight again. And I think the pay-per-view record was either on that fight or it's in the top 2 at least. So yeah, it's one of it. And if they had a rematch, you're guaranteed the sales are going to be huge off it. So I know that he would want that to happen. But
that's the only fight they've taken together, right? They've only fought once.
Only fought once, yeah. So
I mean, I think that's compelling enough for Khabib to take. I mean, if he wants to really cement himself as the greatest, and somebody's come up as the #1 contender twice, bad blood or not, or even somebody who's challenged him the most, surely he would want to even make that his last fight, beats McGregor comfortably if that's what he's expecting. He can then retire and say that he was the best ever.
Okay, so I think that I've just had a data warning, Sean, saying I've gone
Are
through.
you on your phone or in your data
Yeah,
signal?
I didn't realize. I thought
Well, jump on the Wi-Fi because I think your phone will work fine on the Wi-Fi. I thought you were on the Wi-Fi. Sorry, mate.
no, I thought I was. Let me just get this sorted for a minute.
So
Yeah, I mean,
just
it
whilst
says
Hugh's getting sorted, I'll fill everybody in. He's having a bit of Wi-Fi issues today because Hugh lives in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but fields. It's so in the middle of nowhere that the Wi or the broadband companies don't give a fuck enough to put a wire out there to give him proper internet signal. So we were on a data signal. Are you on Wi-Fi now?
well, I've got the Wi-Fi button on, which it has been the whole time, but there's no Wi-Fi on the actual top of the phone here.
So
Like I can't
your
see it.
Wi-Fi was probably so bad it said, "Oh, you should surely be using the data if
4G.
you're yeah."
Oh God. Okay. We'll just have to keep going for now, then, mate. I'll have to keep an eye on that.
Well, keep an eye out. So
Sorry,
so
mate.
so yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. But I just wanted to see what you thought. My takes are still a bit nubile, so I wanted to see
So,
what the
yeah, I just wanted to respond to that, Sean. So your comment was like, I still you still think it. I disagree because Khabib can sit there and watch Conor agonize over wanting to fight him. He's got all of the cards on the table. He doesn't. I've already beaten you. I beat you convincingly. I kicked your ass. Why do I need to put all of my unbeaten record, my legacy, everything on the line? The build up to the fight will be so stressful because there'll be this animosity, and he's given this guy a chance to beat him. Why? He's already beaten him. You don't need to do it again. He doesn't need to prove it. I don't think it would change. From what I've seen as well, I'm not convinced that anything would be different. I think Khabib would maul anyone at 155.
yeah.
But if I were Khabib, I wouldn't fight him either. It's like I don't
So
need
is
to.
that
He's got the
anything
money.
like boxing though? Because in boxing, you kind of when you take on a championship challenger, there's an expectation of a rematch, just to really cement who is the best.
It really depends
And
on how the fight goes. So if Poirier and Connor kicked his ass in the first fight. Poirier, I wouldn't say kicked his ass, but he knocked him out. So it was quite emphatic. So you'd say, okay, we do a rematch. And actually, there's a kind of Poirier knew that going in against Connor, he was going to get a payday. So when Connor's saying, look, you fancy a rematch, he's given it. He's like, yeah, you gave me an opportunity to earn good money on this pay-per-view. I'll give you a rematch type of thing. And there was no animosity between them. They seemed there was respect there. Really depends on how it goes. If it's a very one-sided fight, people don't really want to see that again. We've already seen it, but I think the viewers would be there. I'm just going to go back to my point. I think Khabib has far more to lose. He's got everything to lose and nothing really to gain. He's not motivated by money. He's already beaten everyone. He's beaten him not that long ago. It's like, why would I risk everything again? I've done it.
if I think of every heavyweight champion boxer that's ever come to pass, they've had to beat people more than once to sort of cement their standing. And I for me, and forget that it's Conor McGregor. If Dana White, it sounds like no matter what, the UFC are going to be taking the top 7 and seeing who comes out on top, because Khabib isn't taking any fights until somebody's earned the right to fight Khabib, and he's earned that right. I think no matter who it is, unless he's retiring now, which he hasn't, he's going to take that fight. I can't see him. I would find it difficult to believe if Conor tears through his next 2 or 3 fights, he doesn't take that fight. I just don't see how like, okay, I'm ready and I gave you trouble before. Let's prove that let's prove that you're the best. I just don't see him ending on that note. I just don't see it.
I think the point that you make and the point that Dana ended up with, if Conor goes on a tear and if Khabib is sat there on the sidelines itching to get back in, because a lot of sports people can't retire and sit out, and if he's seeing this guy talk this big game and now I'm fresh, now I'm fight ready, I could have easily beaten Khabib, and if he was brave enough to come back and he gives it all that, and I could maybe see Khabib going, I'm just going to go and shut this guy up again. But there are a couple of big ifs there, because Conor couldn't get past Poirier. He's got that division is extremely tough. I'm not sure he's going to go on a fight tear now. I think he's on his way out. Unfortunately, I'm a Conor fan, but I think he's done so well for himself. He just doesn't have that same juice that he used to.
Doesn't need to.
Possibly, I could be wrong on that. He doesn't need to, and I think any normal person wouldn't have even gone and fought Dustin Poirier because he doesn't need to. But he's that much of a man, and he's that great a sports person and an athlete that he's prepared to do that. But yeah, so I don't see Conor running through the division. But if he did, and if Khabib had been out for a couple of years, that might, if you've then turned it back on its head, haven't you? You've then got Khabib that's a little bit rusty. This might be this is going to be a different proposition. But I think it's unlikely. But I acknowledge, mate, that's a distinct possibility.
Well, let's see where it goes from there. It was something I wanted to get your take on again, because I'm still trying to pick this up from the get-go, and I like to hear your point of view, given you've been watching this, and I really respect your opinion. So